Hello everyone and welcome. So let's begin journey of critical reasoning for CLAT 2023. This is the first session and that therefore it's introductory session. The purpose of introductory session is to understand how to prepare for CLAT critical reasoning. What is critical reasoning? How to deal with critical reasoning along with what should be strategy or study plan. What are the questions, how to get the answer, and what should be the elimination strategy. So, we are going to start from scratch in detail. This is warm up session, introductory session, or beginning session in which your job is to just get ideas and your job is to just get updated with the terminologies that are used. Before we proceed, first, let us understand the syllabus of CLAT and then weightage of critical reasoning in CLAT. So, this is your syllabus of CLAT, English language. Number of question can vary, but it will be 28 to 32. The weightage of English is 28 to 32. Second is current affairs, including general knowledge. So, that is called GK. Total number of question will vary, but it can range 35 to 39. The weightage is same. So, this is legal reasoning. This is legal reasoning. Total number of question will be 35 to 39. So, GK plus reasoning is almost 80 question, means what? 50%. Fine. So, the weightage of current affairs and legal reasoning will be 50%. In the rest of 50%, it is English language, logical reasoning, and quantitative techniques. Logical reasoning 28 to 32%. So the total number of questions will be 28 to 30. So here it is almost 30 to 40%. So English language and logical reasoning together it is almost 30 to 40%. So it's 90% and the rest of 10% is quantitative technique. So the weightage of logical reasoning is almost 20%. You can go with the better calculation, yet 20% means what? It's a quarter, right? And quarter is more than sufficient to get a score. Therefore, critical reasoning is important. Second, why you should learn critical reasoning? It develops your critical thinking. It develops your understanding. It develops your decision making ability. And it develops your, justification of any argument. In day-to-day life, you will encounter a lot of arguments, but that converts into debate. But after critical reasoning, now the argument will not remain argument and your evaluation technique will be very different, and that's called educated thinking. So when you see any argument after critical reasoning, that's called the critical thinking, educated critical thinking. But once you look at from general point of view, you cannot reach to any conclusion. Why? Because you do not know how to evaluate. And therefore, logical reasoning or critical reasoning is important. Now, what should be your study plan to be strong in critical reasoning? So, just make a plan, divide your planning in three parts. Your plan one is first understand syllabus. If you know syllabus, you can evaluate it according to your thinking. So the first, understand syllabus. Then now make a list of notes. Why? Because through the notes you will be able to evaluate. After that, make a list of notes. Why? Because notes will help you to solve the questions. And after that, source of practice. As you know and you believe, practice makes a man perfect, and therefore you should have a good source of practice. Plus, healthy discussion, that is important. Why? Because correction of approach is important. And here we are with the paid course, because in paid course we will discuss a lot of questions and different types of questions, and even we will take your concern and we will correct your approach. Because when you solve questions and then you start applying approach, whether it's right approach or wrong approach, how would you justify? With the discussion, and with whom? Of course, faculty, trainer, or an expert, and that will be done in paid courses. Here for the that these courses, this foundation part, this bridge course, our job is to work on foundation. So start working. Now let me repeat what you have to do. When you started preparing for critical reasoning, first understand the syllabus, and after that make a list of means study materials and notes, and after that find the source of practice and do the practice. Then after that make a list of errors and error logs, and then go to the next point, that will be the discussion, and that will help you to achieve 100% accuracy. If not, then at least 90% accuracy in critical reasoning within time. Now, what is base of critical reasoning? Base of critical reasoning is logic. And what is mean of logic? Logic means a clue that helps to justify reasoning. That is called logic, right? For example, I said, I am sick, yet I am attending session, right? So how is it possible that somebody is sick and yet attending session? So here you have to add logic to justify it, and for that logic you need clue. Sick yet attending session, it means somewhere some healthcare technique has been used. It means medicine has been taken, and this is called the logic. So we should believe in the argument and we should justify, and that argument is I'm sick yet I'm attending session. It's been what? That somewhere medicine is working. That is called logic. To find the approach of logic or to justify logic, what should be step one? Step one should be to understand fact. If you go with the literal definition, there are many. But if you go with the shortcut or general definition of fact, it's mean fact is equal to premise. And premise or fact means a piece of information based on fact is called premise. Fine. So whatever piece of information you take, if it is based on fact, it means it is premise. And every reasoning begins from that fact. What if we have to go? What if we have to go with the logical part of premise? Then if you go with the literal definition, a fact, proposition, or a statement from which conclusion is made is called premise. Premises support and explain conclusion. Example, the Jacksonville area has just over 1 million residents. The Cincinnati area has almost million residents. The New York area has almost 20 million residents. These are what? These are the factual information. And because these are the factual information, therefore this is called premise, premise and premise. So in short, premise means a piece of information based on any fact is called premise. So premise can be anything. For example, I'm a teacher, right? This is a simple statement, yet it is fact and therefore it is premise. You are a learner. Fine, you are a learner. This is fact and therefore it is premise. We need score to get admission, right? So we need a score to get admission. This is fact. It is called premise. So the first point of any reasoning is premise. Without premise, reasoning cannot be taken. Critical reasoning is not possible, and therefore you have to begin. Remember, premise is backbone of any critical reasoning. So the first and base of critical reasoning is premise. Second is called conclusion. What is conclusion? Conclusion is a statement or judgment that follows from one or more reasons. Conclusion is a statement or judgment that follows from one or more reasons. It's been what? That whatever we derive from the premise, whatever the reason we give to derive the conclusion, to derive the information, that is called conclusion. Example has been given. I'll give you some simple examples too. All professors are ethical. Mason is a professor. Therefore, Mason is ethical. Now this sentence has base. And what is that? Mason, professors ethical, and Mason is professor, therefore Mason will be ethical. So this is called conclusion. If you go with the general terminology or सीधी बात or आम भाषा, straightforward, then conclusion means a derived information from premise. A derived information from premise is called conclusion. Now look, I'm a teacher. Therefore, I should be knowledgeable. What is fact? I'm a teacher, it's a fact. And on the basis of that, I'm concluding I must be or I should be knowledgeable. So the point is, this is fact. On the basis of that fact, one information has been taken or made, and therefore this is called conclusion. One more example. You are a test taker of CLAT. Therefore, you should work on your reasoning. Now look here. You are a test taker. On the basis of test taker, now one conclusion has been taken that you should work on your reasoning. Fine. So this is your fact. On the basis of that fact, this information has been derived and therefore it is called conclusion. So two important aspects of critical reasoning is what? Premise and conclusion. Now, third terminology. Terminology 1, premise. It's been a piece of information based on fact. Now, second terminology, that is called conclusion, derived information from the fact. Third is called argument. What is argument? Premise plus conclusion is called argument. When you include premise and conclusion together, make one piece of information, that becomes argument, and therefore this part is an argument. Why? Because it has premise and it has conclusion. Third, argument means premise plus conclusion. However, in some cases people consider or people say argument means conclusion, conclusion is argument. It's possible, it has logic. Why so? Because if you write any piece of information, example, CR is base of decision making. Fine. CR is base of decision making. Now it is a fact, so it cannot be an argument, right? Therefore, CR should be developed. Now, look here. Why conclusion is also called argument? Because without entry of conclusion, it cannot become an argument. Therefore, conclusion and argument is considered same. However, there is slight difference. When we include premise plus conclusion together, it becomes argument. Otherwise, they are individual, premise and conclusion. So, three important points: premise, conclusion and argument. So, the first job of critical reasoning to understand argument. What if you are unable to differentiate between premise and conclusion, or you are unable to understand what the argument is? Then there is shortcut. What is shortcut? If any sentence begins with because family. If any sentence begins with because family, it's mean premise. Or any sentence begins with reasoning word, it's mean it is premise. For example, because, as, since, for. If any sentence begins with premise family, because family, then it will be premise. Example, you must be a teacher because you have knowledge. Right? So look here, because you must be a teacher since you have knowledge, premise. You must be a teacher as you have knowledge. So if any sentence begins with because family, it's mean premise. There are few more words that can be used to understand. premise part, because, since, for example, marker of premise, for the reason that, marker of premise, in that, marker of premise, given by, marker of premise, as indicated by, marker of premise, due to, marker of premise, owing to, marker of premise, this can be seen from, marker of premise, we know this by, marker of premise. So shortcut, because family. If you go with the long cut, these words are for marker of premise. Same time, if any sentence begins with, so family, if any sentence begins with so family, it means conclusion. So family, so, thus, therefore, hence, etc. For example, this is a class, therefore we should maintain discipline. All right. So look here, this is a class, therefore we should maintain discipline. Therefore, marker. In case of therefore, if it is so, we should maintain discipline. Thus, we should maintain discipline. Hence, we should maintain discipline. It's mean conclusion. So the shortcut is, if any sentence begins with so family, it's mean conclusion. If you want to go long cut, so these are some words. Thus, marker of conclusion. Therefore, marker of conclusion. Hence, marker of conclusion. Consequently, marker of conclusion. As a result, marker of conclusion. So, marker of conclusion. Accordingly, marker of conclusion. Clearly, marker of conclusion. Must be that, marker of conclusion. Shows that, marker of conclusion. Conclude, marker of conclusion. Follows that, marker of conclusion. And for this reason, marker of conclusion. Now, after identification of argument, in spite of that, if you do not find any keyword and there is no marker, then how do you get to know this is an argument? So there is one theory is called X, therefore Y theory. X, therefore Y, or X because Y. What if you do not find any marker, yet you have to get to know about argument? Then how do you get to know? X, therefore Y, or X because Y. If the structure is X, therefore Y, then X premise, Y conclusion. If X structure is X because Y, in that case, X conclusion and Y premise. All right. Now, so before we proceed and understand other terminologies, let's understand about the argument. Now, look, understand argument. Humans cannot live on Venus because the surface temperature is too high. Premise means fact and derived information is conclusion. The word is given because. It's mean any sentence begins with because family. It should be premise. So the surface temperature is too high. This is your premise. Based on that premise, the information has been taken. Humans cannot live on Venus, and therefore this is called conclusion. The surface temperature is too high. Premise, humans cannot live. Conclusion. Marker, because and therefore. One more example. Therefore, since. What if you find two conjunctions together? What if you find two conjunctions together? In that case, the second conjunction will be considered first. Second conjunction will be considered first. So here the second conjunction is since, right? Therefore, you have to consider since, and any sentence begins with since will be premise. So, since higher debt has forced consumers to lower their savings, now add therefore banks now have less money to loan. X therefore Y. Because X therefore Y. So higher debt has forced consumers to lower their savings, therefore banks now have less money to loan. Since premise, higher debt has forced consumers to lower their savings, and conclusion, banks now have less money to loan. So this is called your conclusion, and this is called X therefore Y. X because Y theory. Two important terminologies of basic of CR: understanding premise and understanding conclusion. Third is background information. Premise, conclusion, argument, and now background information. As you know, premise plus conclusion is called argument, and this is an argument. Individually they are premise and conclusion. Coming to the background part, background information. A piece of information that supports premise. A piece of information that supports premise is called background information. For example, this is a class. Therefore, there must be educational discussion, right? So this is a class premise, this is conclusion. There is no background information. What if there is one piece of information that supports this is a class? People are ready to attend the class, right? So look here, people are ready to attend the class, therefore there must be educational discussion. Does it make sense? Answer is no. Why so? Because conclusion has not been taken from here. Conclusion has been taken from here. But what is this piece of information? This piece of information is just extra information for premise. So any piece of information that is extra information for premise is called background information. Now let us understand with one more example. Look here. Every professor at Fillmore University teaches exactly one class per semester. Fillmore's Professor Jackson, therefore, is teaching exactly one class this semester. Moreover, I heard Professor Jackson say she was teaching only a single class. From here to here, this is your argument, right? Jackson is teaching exactly one class this semester because every professor teaches exactly one class per semester. So premise, conclusion, This is your argument. And now from here, I heard Professor Jackson say she was teaching only one class. This is what? This is just extra information for argument. So any piece of information that helps to support premise is called extra information. And remember, extra information does not give any conclusion. Conclusion is always taken from the premise. And in reasoning, you have to learn how to get rid of extra information. Sometimes, in general, there will be one premise and one conclusion. In general, there will be one premise, one conclusion. But sometimes it is possible that there will be two premises for one conclusion. And that can be premise, conclusion, premise, or premise, premise, and then conclusion. Then how do you get to know that these two are the parts of premises or these two are the parts of conclusion? So logic you have to add, and it is based on logic. What if you find that conclusion can be taken from any of the premises? Then there are two premises. What if you find that conclusion is possible from any of them? This means two premises. If you find that no, conclusion can be taken from only one premise, it means only one premise. For example, look here. The rapid diminishment of the ecosystem of the Amazon threatens the entire planet. Consequently, marker of conclusion, we must take immediate steps to convince the Brazilian government that planned development projects need to be curtailed for the simple reason that these development projects will greatly accelerate the loss of currently protected land. Now, look here. Premise, conclusion. What is premise? Rapid diminishment of the ecosystem of Amazon threatens the entire planet. Therefore, we must take immediate steps to convince the government that planned development projects need to be curtailed, right? For this simple reason. Look here. We must take immediate steps to convince the Brazilian government that planned development projects need to be curtailed. And again, because development projects will greatly accelerate the loss of currently protected land. So if you go with the X, therefore Y, or X because Y, you will get the answer. Look, planned, curtailed, because accelerate the loss of currently protected land. Did you get? So the conclusion can be taken from any of them. Conclusion can be taken from any of them, and therefore it has two premises for one conclusion. In general, there will be one premise, one conclusion, but sometimes there can be two premises, one conclusion. Look here. Premise 1, the rapid diminishment of the ecosystem of the Amazon threatens the entire planet. Premise 2, these developments projects will greatly accelerate the loss of currently protected land. Let us understand with one more passage. After background information, there is counter information. Counter information. What is counter information? It's opposite information of either premise or conclusion. Any piece of information that is opposite of either premise and conclusion will be now. So let's revise all the terminologies. First, premise. Second, conclusion. Third, argument. Fourth, background information. and fifth is counter information. Any piece of information that either opposes premise or conclusion is called counter information. So, a piece of information based on fact, premise, derived information is called conclusion, premise plus conclusion is called argument, extra information for premise is called background information, and opposite information of premise or conclusion is called counter information. So these are the terminologies that should be used to evaluate passage. As in CR, when you are thinking about logic and you are involved in lot of sentences, then your reasoning will become a problem. So to get rid of those reasonings, first you should segregate informations. And when you segregate information, then you will be able to get to know what is real premise and real conclusion, that is called argument. And after getting to know the argument, logic is possible. What if there are many sentences and it has long passage or long paragraph and you are unable to know what is real information and what is the base of argument? Then it will be a problem. Hence, first work on your basic, and that basic is understanding of premise, understanding of conclusion, understanding of argument, understanding of background information, and understanding of counter information, that is called opposite information. In next class, in next session, we will discuss whole passage in detail, and that passage can have a lot of different types of piece of information.